Tungsten is a metal that I'm guessing most of you are not super familiar with. You may have heard of it, but you probably don't know much about its properties or uses. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how useful tungsten can actually be and why it is the absolute GOAT. Tungsten is an unsung hero for what it does, and you should be grateful for this amazing metal. There are two main properties that make tungsten useful. It is really dense and it has a very high melting point. Tungsten is one of the densest metals that is not a precious metal. It also has the highest melting point out of all the elemental metals. Having good heat resistance makes it useful for metalworking in situations involving really hot engines. The thing I love about tungsten is utility that it brings to the table because of how dense it is. Since tungsten is such a heavy girl, it is used for things like fishing weights and gun ammunition. Additionally, due to its density, it is used as a way to block radiation. But wait! This all sounds familiar somehow. It sounds like these are all uses for some other material that is not tungsten. Yes, lead. The last three uses I mentioned are all things that lead do. And I may have said that tungsten is a heavy girl, but isn't it true that lead is known as a heavy boy? Also correct. So it would seem that tungsten does a lot of the same stuff that lead does. But here's the thing. Tungsten is better than lead. It is a superior metal. All lead wishes that it was tungsten. Lead is nothing more than the poor man's tungsten. One reason that tungsten has a huge advantage over lead is that it's not super toxic like lead is. Sure, you should not ingest tungsten into your body, but it's generally safe to handle, and pieces of tungsten metal going into the environment are not a huge concern. Lead, on the other hand, is very dangerous, since even very small amounts that enter your body can cause massive damage. We don't want any lead anywhere in the environment, whether it is in the ground, the water, or the air. Tungsten is also better than lead because it is more dense. Yes, lead is known as the heavy metal. We even know the saying going down like a lead balloon. But tungsten weighs, like more than lead. It's usually around 70% more dense. This makes it better than lead for the applications that lead is used for because of its density. Let's start with fishing weights. I will admit that lead actually does have some advantages over tungsten. The main thing is that it is a cheaper metal. Another advantage is that it requires much less energy to work since it has a very low melting point for a metal compared to tungsten, which is known for having a high melting point. Despite this, tungsten still kicks lead's butt. One advantage is that tungsten does not pollute the environment. If you fish a lot, you are inevitably going to lose a lot of weights. Your lead weights will go into the body of water you are fishing in and stick around as a pollution hazard. If you lose tungsten weight, you might be a bit annoyed because of the higher cost, but the cost for the environment will be far less. Additionally, tungsten weights use less metal because it is denser. Less metal also means less mining, which is also good. On top of this, being denser and smaller makes tungsten better for fishing compared to lead. Any fisherman would prefer to use a tungsten weight over a lead one because of the better quality. And let's not forget that lead weights are downright banned in a lot of areas. Already you can see how lead is nothing more than the poor man's tungsten. Next, we should talk about guns. An evil of society, no doubt, but one that people are actually forced to use from time to time for hunting or military use. When one thinks of gun ammunition, they probably think of bullets. Most bullets are made with lead. Lead is used because of its density. A bullet should be very dense so that it is able to do a great amount of damage to a target with a limited amount of space it can occupy inside of a gun. However, tungsten can also be used. The same goes for shotgun shots. Shots often use lead, but tungsten is better since it is not toxic and better for the environment. It also has the added bonus of being more devastating ammunition if it is compared against lead ammunition of the same size due to the greater density. Most bullets are made of lead because tungsten is expensive. However, when you want a really powerful bullet, you use tungsten because it can get a job done better than lead. What did you expect? Of course tungsten is better, since lead is nothing more than the poor man's tungsten. Large armor-piercing shells are often made with tungsten for extra force provided by the dense metal. Depleted uranium can also be used in armor-piercing shells if you're a nuclear country that has some of this stuff lying around. Depleted uranium can be a bit finicky, though, due to residual radiation, along with uranium being quite flammable. It is also toxic, by the way. Since we aren't in a topic of radiation going through, we should talk about radiation shielding, because we don't want radiation to go through stuff. You may have heard that lead is good at blocking radiation, but guess what? Tungsten is better. Obviously it is, since lead is the poor man's tungsten. Lead is good at blocking radiation due to having a nice density, but tungsten is a super thick girl, so she still kicks lead in his stupid butt when it comes to blocking radiation. A layer of tungsten compared to a layer of lead of the same thickness will block significantly more radiation. Because of this, a much thinner layer of material can be used to block radiation with tungsten as opposed to lead. Which also makes it more practical is the fact that it's not toxic, which makes it, much easier to work with. I mean, obviously. In conclusion, tungsten is a silent, noble hero that always paves the way for us in life. We should be grateful for this glorious metal that the universe has been kind enough to bless us with.